Welcome everybody, my name is Rob Brown and we are continuing with a series of virtual roundtable discussions with leaders of international networks, associations and alliances in the world of accounting and professional services. We are in crazy times. COVID is leaving no stone untouched in the world, and businesses are suffering, people are suffering, and accountants, professionals, lawyers, they are at the heart of trying to get the world going again. And we have three great panelists with us today. I'm going to invite them to introduce themselves in just a moment. And then we have a few questions we're going to talk about in terms of leadership and how they're supporting their firms and what opportunities and challenges we see are happening. So we have a very international panel as always. Paul, can I invite you first to give us a little introduction? Tell us about your role and who you represent.
Sure, Rob. So I represent EAI International. We're an association of 80 firms in 60 countries around the world. My personal background is I was a partner in a fairly large firm, Kingston Smith in London, for about 10 years and worked there 15 in total. And my role is to professionalize and develop EAI International as we move forward.
Thank you very much. Richard, welcome. Give us a little introduction, please.
Yeah. So Richard Kleiner, I'm the chairman of Excellency, which is a relatively new alliance of professional service providers, predominantly accountants, lawyers and management consultants. We started at the beginning of 2018. For my sins, I'm also a managing partner of a firm of accountants in the UK, Gerald Edelman, a mid-tier firm, but it gives me a good insight into both the alliance and actually what's happening on the ground with clients.
Thank you very much. Is it hard, Richard, to wear both hats of running an organization like this and also managing a firm?
Not really, because the management of the firm is much more strategic than operational. And bringing that strategic management to the alliance is, I think, quite useful because I treat member firms like clients.
It's a very good point. Anthony Gomez from Bilbao, it is lovely to have you with us today. Please give everyone a little introduction.
Okay, thank you. My name, as you mentioned, is Anthony Gomez. I currently am the chairman of Auren International. I will talk a little bit later. And the CEO of Antia. Auren is a network, but Antia is an association. I'm also the chairman of the regional Spanish board, a professional accounting body, and also I'm member of the small and medium practice advisory group of IFAC. Auren is a network present in 11 countries with 59 offices, with a little more of 2,000 employees.
And you must have more hours in your day, Anthony, than everyone else to be into so many things. Is it difficult being part of a network and an association?
Well, I think are absolutely complementary because in our network, we are also members of the Forum of Firms. So these allow us to keep absolutely high standards of quality, absolutely identical image, strategy. The name is completely the same all over the 59 offices we have in the market. Also, we are a multidisciplinary firm covering auditing and assurance, tax and legal, consultancy, and corporate finance, with the same line in all the parts where we operate. So to complement the coverage in the countries where we are not present is why we have this association.
Yeah, that makes good sense. So let's get talking, fellas. And Richard, I'll start with you, if I may. We've not had anything like this. We had a global recession in 2008, 2009, and that hit the world hard. But COVID-19 is something different. So tell us about the response. How good are accountants generally at dealing with things like this? And did we learn anything from the crash back then? And how do you feel they've coped with what's happening right now?
Well, you know, they say, Rob, accountants don't always make good business people.
Yes.
And that clearly, in my mind, is something that the people that don't make good business people will not survive. This crisis is completely different to 2008-9. 2008-9, we all thought actually the world was coming to an end from a banking system point of view. But actually, the underlying, although we went into recession, there was still quite a lot of activity. This is completely different because it's completely changed the way people live, not even just work.
Yeah.
We've had, I think people have had to react and be decisive in a much more quicker time frame than they would have done after the financial crisis. So, for instance, making sure the IT works, everyone can work from home. Now, my firm, we're 150 people, and within 24 hours, we're all working from home. And it works. You know, there are days where the IT is not good, but the IT is not good on some days when you're in the office. But making decisions about cash preservation, not just for ourselves, but for our clients as well, and making sure that we put ourselves out there amongst our clients in a caring way. So we brought in a service to offer a non-exec directorship free of charge for 3 months, just so that the clients could feel that they were getting somebody holding their hand and probably closer to what government support was out there. And we actually, as a firm, and I think the UK particularly reacted more proactively than maybe other jurisdictions, from the member firms and excellency, certainly as examples, in that we were ahead of the curve in making decisions. So within a matter of weeks, we were applying for government support. We'd furloughed quite a few employees. Partners had reduced their drawings, all because at the end of the day, the important thing is that the firm needs to come through this as unscathed as possible.
Yeah.
So I think it is a complete difference. And I think what's going to happen as we move forward is to keep on making decisions on that. So again, with my firm, we've got, rather fortunately, we have 2 offices, one in the city and one in North London. The lease on the North London office expires in October. We've been thinking for the last year and a half, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, I'll tell you what we decided to do. We're doing nothing.
Yeah.
We are going to actually, we've said to our team, we're not replacing the office. We're going to bring in a robust work from home policy. And as long as we see you 1 day a week on average, that's fine. And let me tell you, the team have reacted very positively.
Yeah.
Because what's the point of them sitting in front of a computer, spending 2 hours traveling time, when they can do it walking to their desk in 10 seconds?
That's a good point. And we will talk about some of the changes that are going to happen coming up. But Anthony, give us the European perspective. You're out there in Spain. How have the Spanish and Mediterranean accountants coped with what's happening? It's a slightly different vibe to the UK.
Well, it's essentially the same. I think, as Richard mentioned, this crisis has been completely different from the financial crisis, because these were suddenly all our clients had difficulties closing premises, etc. Nevertheless, professionals are used to different situations and to cope with the situations that can happen. I think also the state of technology was very, very different from the previous one. Certainly in Europe, most of the professionals, not only in Spain, but also in France, in Italy, all around Europe, mostly immediately started to work on remote working. And this has allowed to continue serving the clients in the changing needs they had.
Yeah. You do wonder, Paul, don't you, how we would have coped had COVID happened in the 1990s or the early 2000s, where we, as Anthony mentioned, we wouldn't have the technology to cope with it.
That's right. And I think what this does demonstrate is how flexible the accountants have been in terms of the work. And as Richard said, most of his office went immediately to remote working, probably because some were already doing it. And, I've seen that with a lot of our firms. The firms that were already partially remote working, it was very easy to switch everybody to remote working. We had a couple of members, so we have one member in Europe where they wanted to switch to remote working, but they couldn't actually buy any laptops. All the laptops had been sold out in that particular country. And we've had other situations where people, not in Europe, another firm was 93% remote working anyway. I think the response has been really good from accountants. The point Richard made about business is the interesting one, because I think whilst it's quite easy to do the work remotely, it's very difficult to do the business remotely. And I think, yes, there will still be a place for our offices. Personally, I have a property business as well, so I don't like the sound of Richard actually terminating his lease, but there you go, never mind, that's a different question. But I think business will need to be carried on person in the future.
Yeah. And have you heard stories about accounting firms making quicker decisions? I've heard things like, what would usually take us 2 or 3 years to decide, we've just pushed through in 3 or 4 weeks, and it's become much faster at making decisions generally to all three of you.
Absolutely. I mean, I think everybody in the profession has been talking a long time about robotics, artificial intelligence taking over the more basic jobs, and this has just pushed that much harder. It's like a decision has been made for you, and now you have to adapt to that in terms of the working side of things.
And Anthony, you remember the crash, and you do too, Richard, in 2008-9. Did we learn anything from that? Has that helped us to cope a lot faster with something as drastic as this?
I think I was mentioned before, I think they're incomparable, actually, because I think although there were some systemic issues at the time of the crash, particularly with banking system and access to money, and most governments of the world applied their quantitative easing to bring liquidity into markets. I think that people's living tended to just carry on, worried maybe about the financial climate, but nevertheless, nobody was working from home and not going out for 3 months. So I think the lessons actually are more life lessons out of this crisis, that I think people will change how they actually live their life, how they shop, and also to a certain extent, although I completely agree with other comments about, business is still better done face to face. And one of the frustrations of doing work from home is that lack of physical interaction with clients and colleagues, where, having lunches or drinks after work is how real business is done, because that's how real relationships are formed. So whilst that's there, I still think that people will change their work-life balance. And I think that working from home is going to become very much the norm.
Well, Anthony, let's turn to you. We know that it's not good to be alone. You are a member of a number of professional bodies. It's not good for accounting firms to be isolated at a time like this. So why do professional firms need to plug into a network, association, or alliance at times like this? And tell us about some of the ways you've supported your members.
Yes, and generally speaking, we live in a global world, so it's very difficult to be isolated in a country, because even small and medium companies need sometimes to have some advice in other countries. So networks and associations today are absolutely necessary. But especially in situations like this that we have lived, is extremely important to have other points of contact. Some experiences in some countries can be very helpful to be sure on the path that we go ahead in our own firm. When you enter in contact with colleagues in other countries, you realize that your solutions or your problems are basically the same. But sharing experiences multiplies the capability to understand what could be the solutions. For instance, in our organizations, we have prepared a lot of seminars about how we as professionals can face the difficulties on these times, and the regulations in most of the countries have been hundreds of laws, regulations on tax, labor, other matters. And so it was very important to know what happened in other countries, also to advise properly to our clients.
Paul, I love the quote that Anthony came out with there. The sharing of experiences multiplies the capability of your solutions. And this is not a time for accounting firms to be alone, is it?
No, absolutely. And I mean, actually, if you look at the track of how this virus spread across the world, so I mean, it started off in China and the Far East, and then it moved slowly towards Europe and then to America. Our office, the member in Shanghai, was shut while everybody else was open, and so there was an experience there that people could learn from of, you know, what will happen to us. So I think being part of the association is important from that point of view. The other thing that's a lot of the members are talking about is, for example, in the US, where we have a member that might have a piece of audit work that needs to be done in a completely different state, is that now they have the opportunity to actually go to a fellow member and say, look, we don't really want to travel that distance, or we don't want to travel to a different country, and that, because we're in an association with you guys, perhaps you could do that work for us. So I think it brings together the ability to work together as well.
That's a really excellent point. And the game has changed, hasn't it, Richard? We need all these different partners and connections to get the work done.
Yeah, work done, and also, as Anthony said, shared experiences. It's so important. I mean, I hosted a webinar for our membership about 4 weeks ago, and some of them, we're probably one of the larger firms in the alliance. Some of the smaller firms needed to start thinking a little bit outside the box as to how to interact with their clients, and I just said, just pick up the phone, ask them how they are. It doesn't have to be work related, because we have a view that you'll come out of this depending on how people feel you've behaved, not necessarily on how you've done the work, because they expect the work to be done anyway. But how you've behaved, how you've cared, and how you haven't taken advantage of them, I think are key things. And getting that message over, I think, helped our members a lot. And the Argentinian member firm phoned me up the following day and said, I tried it with my largest client, and I just said I phoned him up and said, how are you? He said, why, what's wrong? Has the tax man been on? He said, no, I just wanted to know how you are. How's the family? And the client was so gobsmacked by the phone call that he said, but so appreciative as well. And it's those things that we have to also think about, how we can, elevate those relationships and show people that actually those relationships matter to us, not just economically, but socially as well.
It's a really good point, because accountants and you that lead accountants and other professionals, it's not just work related, as you said, Richard. Accountants are now expected to be therapists, psychiatrists, confidants, friends. You're a shoulder to cry on, and these accountants face this role from the businesses that they serve, and you help the accountants, the managing partners, because they must be crying on your shoulder and reaching out to you about things that's nothing to do with work. So you then have to become a source of strength for them, don't you?
Indeed. And I've always maintained, and I think things will accelerate in terms of getting to this point, that compliance and assurance work is going to be less important to clients. They're going to assume you can do that, but there will be inevitably fee pressure on those parts of the work, and the partners and the leaders of the firms are going to have to deal with their clients at a different level, because the clients are going to insist on more added value services.
Yeah. Anything else to add on that, gentlemen?
No, the point is that certainly, in my view, the situation have accelerated some of the transformations that were seen from several times, moving much slowly than today. Technology on one side, technological transformation has been immediately a need for everybody. So a lot of psychological barriers from firms and partners have been fallen down. Then also attraction and retention of talent. And one of the difficulties for that is the difficulties of the balance of life and work. And we have proved that remote working is possible to be done keeping the service and the productivity. And then, in my view, the third challenge is added value for clients. And certainly in these difficult times, we have been the trustee advisor for most of the clients, not only about the current matters, but how to afford the transformations that these situations have carried on. So I think we have moved very rapidly in only very few months due to this kind of new environment we have faced.
Yeah, you're talking a bit about the challenges there, and we're just going to expand on that now, Anthony. And Paul, what is frustrating accountants right now that you talk to? Where have they hit obstacles, and what's going to make growth and recovery difficult?
Well, I mean, this section probably could take up the whole of the conversation, to be honest. So challenges, I mean, I can go through some specific examples. We have one member who 25% of their client base is in tourism, and they're in Europe. And their challenge was, well, how are we going to replace those revenues? You know, they are doing some free work for those particular clients. But as it happens, because of all the extra regulations, etc., that have come into place, they've maintained their revenue stream by doing extra work for non-tourism clients, and that props up the tourism part of the business. But it does show that I think if you have boutique firms that specialize in a particular sector, then they are really going to struggle if they're in a sector that's been badly affected by this, and you may see some consolidation on that side of the market where firms that have a more general approach start to acquire some of these specialist boutiques, because the specialist boutiques are very profitable. The other challenges that I've heard of are motivation of staff. It's much easier to motivate staff when you're all in one office. Yes, there's some challenges, but when you're all remotely working, it is much more difficult to motivate people and to select people and see where the growth in your new partners, etc., is going to come from, because you're not having that physical contact. It's all by video. So there's a couple of the challenges, but you know, I could go on forever on challenges.
Sure. And Anthony, you talked about talent there. It's keeping your people motivated, because if you don't keep your people happy, you don't keep your clients happy.
Yes, it's absolutely essential to keep the people motivated. But one of the barriers, at least in most of the countries, is that female staff enter in our firms around 50% of the total of recruitment. But then very few of them arrive to key responsibility positions. Very few of them are partners or are just senior staff members. Why? Because one of the barriers is this kind of balance of personal and working life. And so remote working, not in my view, not for the whole working days, but probably 2 or 3 days, and having more flexible time would allow to make these kind of difficulties disappear. So in my view, we have experience that probably are not necessarily so many physical meetings. It's not necessary to have so many hours being at the office to achieve that the results were present. Certainly, we need to compensate, and there are other kind of challenges. For instance, most of our clients come from social events, and probably we will see how social events in future would be different. So our way to attract new clients need to change also in the way that the times are changing.
Sure. Richard, what do you see professional firms hurting right now?
Obviously, keeping the team motivated is so important. We, in my own firm, we've have regular team calls. We obviously all use Zoom and Teams now. We have quiz nights, drinking nights, virtually, of course. And it's about keeping in touch with people all the time.
And I've heard stories about with Zoom and this remote stuff, engagement has actually gone up. Have you found that?
It has. I think it's interesting. The trouble is, I think when you have so we have a Friday drink session,
right,
which we do every sort of couple of weeks. It's a little bit stilted, if I'm being honest. Some of the
Awkward,
younger members of the team, feel a bit inhibited. So we changed it. So last night, yours truly did a cookery presentation.
You did a cookery presentation for the rest.
I had to do a vegetarian one because we have a lot of veggie eaters.
Okay.
And we did it on Zoom, and there was 25 of them attended.
Does Gordon Ramsay need to be worried about anything, or
I don't know. Jamie Oliver might need to be worried.
Yeah, okay.
But it was actually quite good fun. It was a 20-minute, it was literally a mushroom pasta dish with a bit of broccoli.
Okay.
Quite tasty. But it was just fun. It was a fun thing, and everyone was, commenting, having a laugh with some people getting it wrong, and it was much better. In fact, the reaction afterwards, can we do that again next week? So it's a little bit different, but I think you've always got to be thinking about the team, how they feeling about things. But in terms of frustrations, obviously that's more of a challenge. But the frustration part of the challenges is obviously missing the physical interaction, and also just from a workflow, is probably a third of our revenue was transactional, and the transactional stuff definitely has waned a bit this year, because whether people are investors or looking to sell businesses, they're sitting on their hands at the moment, and therefore that work hasn't completely dried up, but it's got a lot less than we had last year, which is obviously a challenge and a frustration, but there's not much you can do about it. So you've just got to be there ready, so when it does come back, you're ready to pounce on it.
Yeah. Any other frustrations or challenges your member firms have, gentlemen, that we've not discussed so far?
I think a big challenge is not right now. The big challenge is going to be in the future for a lot of the European firms, because there are a lot of people sitting at home being paid by the government in most European countries. And towards the end of the year, that's all going to run out, and the clients are going to have big problems with cash. And so when the clients have got problems with cash, it's going to really affect the accounting firms as well. Yeah. So I think that's a big challenge that's coming up that we haven't really touched upon.
Well, let's see if we can bring some hope to the conversation. Where are the opportunities for growth? Some countries and areas are easing lockdown right now. We're starting to see things open up. Hopefully there won't be a second spike. And I'm not asking you just yet to forecast the future, but just looking at opportunities for growth and recovery, what should firms be focusing on? Richard, can you kick us off with that one?
I think as I alluded to before, I think firms are going to have to the extent they haven't already, and some have, move away from the pure compliance approach.
Yeah, advisory things you say.
We a couple of years ago took control of a firm in Liverpool to reduce the delivery cost of basic accounts and tax work, because we feel that there'll be downward pressure on fees, and the people that have done that already and are in the process of doing it will win, because number one, it delegates, stuff that partners and, highly paid managers shouldn't be doing anyway. And they should be focusing on more value-added work, whether it's non-exec directorship or just, general consultancy. We think there's the big opportunity, but it's also, like everything with opportunities, it's also a threat. And I think that's going to be a key component as we move forward. The other one, and I think Paul alluded to before, is inevitably there's going to be some consolidation. Now in the UK market particularly, there's been consolidation moves the last 3 or 4 years, with the likes of Cogital, ETL and others coming into the UK market. I think that's going to continue internationally as well. Possibly boutique firms, as Paul mentioned before, being initially on people's radar screen because of the perception that they've got higher margin. But I think that's going to happen. And I think, the sort of 50 plus generation are going to be thinking about some sort of exit strategy for themselves. Because I think gone are the days that accountants don't recognize they don't actually have a business. And just because their income might have been higher than normal businesses doesn't mean to say they shouldn't share some exit multiple on the business they built up. And I think that will be something that will continue to develop through globally. As I say, UK and parts of Western Europe are already there. I'm not sure globally yet it is, but I think it will carry on.
Yeah. Anthony, are you optimistic for growth and recovery? And where do you think accounting firms should be focusing to come out of this?
Absolutely optimistic. I think in this moment there are a lot of difficulties for companies. Then is when the accountants can help them, orienting them to the solutions. There are a lot of regulations, and regulation would continue in the close future. Certainly, there is a lot of grants and helps, and there would be conditions to control this. At the end of the moment, uncertainty on the future is a real problem for most of the stakeholders. And then is when accountants can help in providing this kind of transparency and trust on the information. On the other hand, I mention information because besides financial information, I think there is a lot of room for environmental, social, and governance information, and the non-financial information as a key element to sustainability of the companies. Certainly, some kind of transformations would be needed. I think firms need to be more multidisciplinary. Problems are more complex, and is needed to have some kind of multi-focus point of view. Also, I think it would be necessary to specialize in sectors because global knowledge is quite difficult to be followed in all the fields. But I think the more complex is the society, and the society today is complex, and with this event have become even more complex. More necessarily is the point of view of independent professionals having the expertise, the ethic behavior, and being close to the entrepreneurs. Most of the young start-up companies are not interested at all on figures. So we can help them on this. We are able to understand what is the reality that is beyond the figures. And so we can be very close to the clients, helping them to navigate in this kind of complex times.
Yeah. There's a theme already, Paul, isn't it, with Richard and Anthony's answers, that we are in complex times, uncertain times. Advisory is the way to go, isn't it? And accountants and professional people are well placed there because they deal well with that overload of complexity and make sense of it to help these business owners do what they need to do. So is that where the growth and recovery will come from for you?
Yeah, I think that there is a big opportunity in getting far more involved with clients in the finance director, CFO type role, because the clients will be suffering with cash and other various financial things,
and they don't have the answers, do they?
They don't, and the challenge perhaps in that respect is, whilst the business owners and the partners in a professional firm will have that experience, the younger people, and this is something that's been going on in accounting for a long time, is that change between being a manager, so your focus is purely on doing the work, and then the change to becoming a partner, where your focus is much more on the business and the clients, it has always been a challenge for accountants, and that's something. But with all challenges, there's opportunities. I tell you what Richard said there about exit. We have a member who's already been approached by 3 firms, basically small firms, small sole trader type firms, who have basically said, I've had enough and I'd rather go off and play golf in Florida. What will you give me for my business? The issue there, of course, is would you give anything? Because I think there's going to be a lot of firms that are doing this, and you have to make a decision: should I pay or should I just wait for the business to shut and then take the clients that way?
I think, Paul, I think that's a really good point, but it does depend, doesn't it, on the size of the firm. So
absolutely.
If the principals behind the firm have a succession plan in place, and you want to get in, then you're going to have to pay. You have to pay, because otherwise, if you're thinking, well, I'll just wait until they don't want to turn up anymore, and then the clients will just, fall into my lap. That may happen with a sort of 1/2 partner firm, but the chances are it won't.
But if that firm's not invested in technology, Richard, and they've not invested in talent, as Anthony was saying, then that firm becomes less valuable, doesn't it, for anyone to take on?
Sure. No, it does become less valuable. But of course, it depends on, I mean, most firms these days have invested a certain amount of money in technology because, nobody's doing tax returns anymore except through software applications because HMRC want it uploaded electronically. So they've got to embrace technology to a certain point. The key thing is the quality of the underlying relationships. That's the key thing. What are the services, what are the relationships like, and how important is the principle to the continuity that you need to bring into the equation whenever you're buying a firm. We've done 4 transactions in the last 5 years, and it's very, very key to make sure that when you're making an acquisition, or the polite term is a merger, of course, it's to make sure you're trying to create a win-win. A win for the continuing firm, but also a win for the outgoing partners. Because if it's not, win-lose often turns into lose-lose.
Yeah.
So some of the people I've spoken to are interested in acquiring the firm, not for the clients at all, but for the people.
Yeah.
They're far more interested in the people than they are the clients. Probably because of the fee base is completely different, but they really have struggled in the past to seek and retain people. So they're therefore, acquiring a firm for the talent is just as important as for the clients.
Indeed.
We're talking about consolidation and mergers, acquisitions. I have to ask, with the 3 of you on here, might there be some consolidation with professional networks, associations, alliances? Anthony, what do you think about that?
I think everybody is thinking on that, but certainly it's not easy because very often there are a lot of crashes when trying to merge with another network or association. Most of networks and associations are present in key countries and significant cities. Normally, the best members are on the most important financial cities, so it's not easy to merge. But certainly, I think the point of the size is today very important. This brings further capabilities to better serve the clients and to offer also more support to the members. But certainly is not very easy because of this fact, in my view.
Yeah. What else do you two think? Is everybody safe here, or is there going to be a little bit of movement?
I don't think that there will be too many mergers in terms of associations merging. What there might be more of is associations becoming networks, particularly people are starting to share work across as the association. So there may be that change. But as Anthony says, we've probably all got complete overlap in where our members are. Yeah. So it's very difficult for us to merge.
Yeah, I think there's got to be a business case for it. If there's no business case, then why would you do it? Is it to extend your reach, maybe extend your area of specialization, or dare I say it, reduce central costs, and therefore subsidize member subscriptions? Other than that, I don't think people are just going to do it for the sake of it, because if we've all got reach, and we're a similar size to Paul's network, we've all got reach, we're across 70 countries now, and expertise within it, then obviously, the economics, broadly, if you're not growing, then the economics are wrong anyway, because, member firms or new member firms would be put off by the entry level. But that aside, I can't see that many mergers, unless they're very small, probably boutique type alliances out there.
Yeah, and the picture will be clearer in 3-6 months' time, because annual subscriptions will be due. Maybe some firms will not renew, and associations, networks will be asked to justify the value that they're providing for those fees, and maybe a little bit of change around that time.
Yeah, that could be the case. Yeah, there may be, hopefully with our networks, you lose 5.
Oh, you 3 are all perfect. I mean,
I'm not saying we're perfect, because I think, as Paul said before, in 3 to 6 months, when the proverbial hits the fan, and government support's gone, and therefore companies will go bust, and therefore firms will lose clients, that they will be looking at overheads and thinking, do we really get much out of the International Alliance membership? And they may go. The smaller alliances will obviously suffer more than the larger ones.
Well, let's talk.
I don't know, Richard. I mean, don't you see that there's an opportunity there that, I mean, a lot of the large networks and associations have multiple members either in the same city or particularly in the US. And, you know, for associations of our size, it's a market that's quite difficult to get in because everybody's already in an association or network. And the attraction for coming to someone like one of our associations is that, you know, they'd be in a pretty powerful position. I don't know. Yeah, I see that as a bit of an opportunity for us.
No, it could be, particularly if you're not got that representation in that city or that jurisdiction. I agree.
Yes, in my view, what we could anticipate is more movements of firms leaving an association to join another that actually emerge. Because those who have been members of an association, it would be hard for them to present to the client saying, well, I'm again alone in the country and I cannot provide you international service. So probably, as mentioned by Richard and Paul, probably members of another association with high cost of belonging or less facilities for them, the less help for them from the headquarters would look for another kind of association. And certainly, I think this could be also a good opportunity for those like Antia, for instance, or probably the others on the panel, being not present in countries where we would like to be present.
Yeah. Whenever I interview new members, I always ask them what their aspirations are for membership. Sometimes I get some very funny answers. Sometimes it's ego. They want to feel that they're an international businessman, and you know, which frankly you don't really want people like that. The other thing is they want work, but they don't necessarily have work to give out. And people who want work, that's fine if they're the only member firm in that jurisdiction. If they've got 3 or 4 other firms, they may not get that much. And therefore, the key criteria for us is, do you have clients with cross-border business, cross-border transactions, and cross-border advice? Because if you don't, I'm not sure we want you, because eventually you won't get enough clients and you'll leave anyway. Yeah. So I'd say to them, I'm saving you 2 years member subscriptions. There's no point you being a member, because really we want people that have the clients that will require the services globally.
Yeah. Well, let's bring this home, gentlemen. That's a fascinating conversation there. Let's look ahead now. Crystal ball. I know we can't know what's happening in the future, but we do know that a recession is coming across the globe. We know that growth has dropped all over the world. So if you think about the landscape for businesses, loans that they've taken out will become due. Tax bills they've deferred will become due. We're in for a tough time, and maybe 2021 might be more difficult than 2020. We don't have a COVID vaccine anytime soon. We might not be going back to networking events and conferences, shaking hands anytime soon. So what do you see coming up, and what advice or encouragement would you give to the accountants watching and listening? Paul, would you like to go first on that one for us?
What advice would I give? Well, I think at the moment, cash retention is pretty key. Cash is king, as they always say.
Yeah.
And you need to keep quite a close eye in terms of your client base. Where are you going to struggle? Where are those opportunities going to come from? I do have involvement in some other businesses and have a digital marketing business, and I have to say it's absolutely gone crazy in that business. So if you're in that space, then that's a good business to be in at the moment. So there are opportunities there, but I think retaining cash and retaining your best people is going to be key.
Richard?
2 words: human spirit. I think one of the things that will happen, I take on board, Rob, what you said about 2021 might be as difficult. I don't think it'll be more difficult.
No? Okay.
But I do think that human spirit will rise up, and people will think life is too short. I'm going to go down and enjoy myself.
Well, we're resilient as humans, aren't we? We do bounce back as a race.
And I think people will get out there and do the things that they miss doing and get on with it. So I think that the housing markets will come back. I think there will be more transactional business because I think people just think, let's just do it. I think there'll also be opportunities for that business because there will be a lot of businesses who will have suffered irreparable damage financially and therefore will need to sell. And there will be, whether it's private equity or VCs or just trade buyers looking for those opportunities to take them on. And that will create more work for, our profession. So, although, I'm not supremely confident because I'm not sure when it's going to happen, I do think that, and it may take 18 months before we have a vaccine, but when we've got the vaccine and everything does return to normal and people feel confident and safe to go on public transport, that we'll all be thinking, do you remember back in 2020, we're all working from home? And there'll be a bit of nostalgia about that, actually. And that's where the work-life balance may change, but I think businesses will be back. The issue is, like we had with the financial crisis, is the debt that all the governments are going to have to take on their own balance sheets, how that will manifest itself later on in terms of tax or other issues.
Debt's a big word, yeah, but I'm just thinking there are some qualified accountants watching and listening to this that will think, I've been furloughed, my accounting firm doesn't want me or need me, I don't want to go back to work, I've got used to being at home, I want to be an entrepreneur, I may even start my own accounting firm because I don't like the way my firm have dealt with things. So,
well, I'd say good luck to them.
Good luck to them, yeah. Anthony, what do you see coming up in the future? I know you're optimistic, but what advice or encouragement would you give to people watching?
Absolutely, as I said, optimistic. I think there are probably three factors that makes the support for this optimism. One is that at the moment we know much more about the coronavirus than 6 months ago, for instance. And this means that even not having the vaccine, any new crisis would be completely different with completely different kind of measures. Second, I think people is willing to return to, let's say, normal. And we have seen how immediately people went to the restaurants, bar, etc. So the same happens with companies. They try to recover as soon as possible. Certainly, it would be some sectors that would suffer a lot. Paul mentioned tourist sector, certainly. But on the other side, pharmaceutical, for instance, by technology in itself, cybersecurity, there would be several sectors that would be booming. In the same way as other sectors, the situation would be some kind of opportunities in different activities, and then the mankind will adapt to the new environment quite rapidly. It's true that there would be some kind of difficulties for the states to support the debt, but I think the general approach has been completely different from the financial crisis of 2007-8. In this case, nobody has fallen in panic about the governmental debt. Probably we will be, or our sons and grandsons would pay our debt for maybe decades. But this is important to support the entrepreneurial structure in the countries, because at the end, this is what supports employment. And we cannot leave millions of people without their earn of living. So I think the situation of this crisis would be completely different. First of all, because, for instance, the European Union, but also United States and other countries are devoting as much money as needed to try to keep business surviving. So I think in this, and especially then for accountants, opportunities would be there. I think every government would try to do the best to try to make as much as possible for maintaining the business and to avoid bankruptcies of the companies. And this would be certainly a lot of opportunities from accountants. So if I have a child trying to decide the career for future, by sure I would advise that accountancy would be the good choice.
That's a very good way to put it, because if we go into dark times and recession and things are tough, that's when you need a good accountant. Paul talked about the importance of cash. If we go into a time of growth and recovery, and Richard talked about human spirit and resilience, you also need an accountant for those plans and those projects and those opportunities. So whatever the question, hopefully those accounting types, those trusted advisors are the answer. So do we think, gentlemen, on the whole, that the outlook is positive and we can make some good from this?
Ask me in 3 months.
Well,
absolutely. I think there's always opportunity.
Yeah.
Every crisis brings opportunity. It might not be where you think it's coming from, but it'll be coming from somewhere.
Yeah. I had a
quote. Sorry, Rob. I think probably our fees would suffer in some reduction. I think we can anticipate that. But if you have a look back on the previous crisis, I don't know many accountants closing their practices because of the crisis. I think several of them were because other kind of situations, because they become too old and they wanted to retire, had not succession, they were not able to adapt to the new needs of clients, but not directly because the financial crisis. We were able to survive. As you mentioned, even in difficult times, accountants are more necessary than ever.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today, for your insights and your contributions and your shared experiences. This has been a wonderful discussion, and we really appreciate you taking part. So I'm going to stop the recording now. You can give a final wave. I don't know why we wave on Zoom, but it's just this need for human contact, isn't it?
Human spirit.
Exactly.
Thank you all for taking part.
Thank you very much.